Hi everybody, this is Maureen Wong from mycasestudies.blogspot.com. Recently I posted a picture of this hibiscus that I watercolored with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, and I got some questions about how I did it, and so I thought I'd share a little video. I'm not going to show the whole thing being colored because I think this took me maybe about 2.5 hours, something like that. And I don't want to bore you to death, so I'll just do a little bit about my technique and what I did for this particular image. Of course, I need the disclaimer that I am no watercolor expert, I am no coloring expert, I am just someone who really likes to color, has a lot of different coloring mediums, and I just like to play, and so this is my latest. One thing I wanted to let you know is this is a really old stamp from Rubbernecker, and I don't think it's available anymore except on the secondary market. So I'm sorry if you fall in love with it and can't find it, but I wanted to use the same image that I used before since people asked specifically about how I did this image. I thought it'd be most helpful if I actually did the same image. And the other thing I wanted to let you know is that I didn't actually stamp this. I tried as hard as I possibly could to get a good stamped image on watercolor paper, which is a little bit textured, and I just could not. This stamp has a lot of detail and a lot of solid space, and I just could not do it even with my Misty. Sorry, Ileana. I was able to get a really nice image on plain white Georgia Pacific cardstock, pressing down on my mount really heavily. I actually used an acrylic block for this because I wanted to press down specifically in these corners where there's the bigger flat spaces, so I didn't want to risk cracking my Misty cover by pressing really hard on certain little areas, so I used a stamp mount, acrylic mount, and I actually pressed really hard on the corners and got a really good impression on my Georgia Pacific cardstock. Then what I did was I scanned it into my computer and I printed it out on watercolor paper. Now I know this might be, or some people might be thinking this is a violation of the terms of use of most stamp companies, that they don't allow you to digitize their images, and normally I wouldn't do it except in this particular case. I wrote to the company, I haven't gotten a response yet to make sure it's okay for me to do that. I believe it is a fair use of it. I'm not going to be making these to sell or anything like that, so it's just for my own personal use. I'm not going to be printing up 100 and giving them away either, so hopefully that's okay with Rubbernecker. But I just wanted to share that tip because I wasted a lot of watercolor paper trying to stamp it out nicely, and I just could not do it. So this was really my only option to get it on this watercolor paper nicely, and you can see it printed out very nicely, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. So I just wanted to let you know this is the watercolor paper that I use, and it's from Canson. Well, not that I use all the time. This is what I used in this particular instance. It's Canson watercolor cold press 90-pound paper. It's 11 by 15 size. They come in all different sizes. The important part about it is the 90-pound weight. I can't feed 140-pound weight cold press watercolor paper through my printer. It handles pretty heavy papers, but it does not take the 140-pound, except in one instance, and I'll go into that just in a little bit. But if I cut this into 8.5 by 11, the 90-pound goes through my printer really easily. So that's what I use. You might not like it because it's flimsy, and it does tend to warp a little bit, but once I put this down on a card, you're not going to be able to tell. I'm going to use lots and lots of adhesive. The other thing that you can do to keep your paper from warping too much is you can actually tape it down to something on all four sides and then do your watercoloring, and then it's not going to warp as much when you're watercoloring it, especially if you're using a lot of water, which I'm actually not going to be doing today, but that's just a little tip. The little tip about the 140-pound watercolor paper is that if you cut it into this small size and then you print your image on plain printer paper and then you tape your 140-pound watercolor paper over where your image printed out and then you run it through, usually the printer can handle that because the rollers are grabbing onto the paper, not to the cardstock. And usually a little piece like this will be able to roll through your printer. I don't guarantee that though, you really have to try it on your own. So if you really want to use the heavier weight watercolor paper, that is something that you can try. So anyway, that is the paper that I'm using. As far as brushes go, I just bought these off of Joann.com. I've got two different ones. These are called Royal Crafter's Choice. They have these really nice little grippy things, soft grips. I don't use these as often because for some reason I just grab these ones. These are Low Cornell. They're both round watercolor brushes. This is, the bigger one is a size 6, which is the one that I'll be mostly using today. And then I have this really, really tiny little one that says 3/0. I don't know how to say that, if it's 3/0 or if there's some terminology for it. But it's really, really tiny. And I like to use that for details. But because the hibiscus is a little bit bigger image and has some big open spaces, I can use my size 6. And then for water, this is a little tip from Jennifer McGuire. These are Craftmates lockables. I don't want to tip it because there's water inside. But this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little compartments. And what it does is it has this little purple thing on the side, and you have to press that in to lift up the covers. If you just try it and lift up the covers without pressing the purple thing, they don't come open. But as soon as you press that purple lever, then you can open your little compartments. And I have all these little compartments filled with water. And the great thing about this is that when one compartment gets dirty, you can switch to the next compartment. Or what you can do is make a dedicated compartment for each color. For instance, for my hibiscus, I had one for the yellow, one for the red, one for the green, one for the brown, one for the blue. So it's up to you, but it's a really handy tip. Thank you so much, Jennifer McGuire. You're a genius. I really like this idea rather than just using one container and having to empty it out every so often. I was using this little, it's an embossing powder jar, and it would get dirty really fast and I'd have to keep cleaning it out. But now I'm using these lockables, and they're pretty good. If they tip over, they don't spill out right away, as long as you have them closed, but they will leak out. They're not watertight, but that's what I'm using. So let's get started. Okay, I forgot to mention the other thing I have is a towel. You can see it's just a plain white towel. I prefer to work with a towel just because I do. A lot of people will work with paper towels. It's really up to you what you want to work with, but you need something to blot off the water from your brushes, blot off water from your paper if you have too much water on your paper. And so just make sure you have either a towel or paper towels or something ready. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm taking, this is my Zig Clean Color Real Brush Marker set, and this is number 50. And I tried to pick out the exact same colors I used on my previous one, but if I forgot what they were, I'm sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is start in the center. You always want to start where you want your color the darkest, and then pull out your color to where you want it the lightest. So I'm going to be coloring my whole petal yellow, so I'll put down just about that much color, and it's just a guess how much. And then what I like to do is draw the color towards me. So I'm going to wet my brush. Let me get that in the shot too. Wet my brush, and then I'm going to dab it on my towel. And you'll see from when you're working on this how much water you like to have on your brush. And for this initial one, I actually want kind of a lot of water because I'm going to be covering this whole entire petal with the yellow. So I actually put a bunch of water on my paper. And of course, there are different ways to work with watercolors. You can work wet on wet or wet on dry. It's just different methods. I'm using the dry method, wet on dry, and I don't tend to use that much water normally, but for this I will. And then that's it. And depending on how dark you want your yellow, you can come in with more color, you can come in with less color. If I have too much color, then what I can do is take my brush and brush it over where I think there's too much color and get it really, really wet, and then dab it off with my towel, and it'll actually pick up some of that extra color. But I really like how this is looking, so I'm going to leave this to dry. And the reason why I want to let it dry is because the way that I work, I like to have a lot of control when I'm blending my pens. And if I went in, well, this is a little bit wet, so if I put in this, it might not spread too much, depending on how much water I have. By the way, this is 52. But if you have a lot of water on your paper, it might spread a lot on its own, and I don't want that. I want to be in control of exactly where my color goes, so I usually let it dry. Well, this isn't too bad. I usually let it dry, and then I'll come in with my next color. So what you can do is, while you're waiting for that petal to dry, you can go over to this petal and work with this petal, and it would be the exact same thing where I just put down the yellow and then I drag out the color. One thing I wanted to show you, and I'll just do it right here, it doesn't matter that it's right next to it, I'm just going to do this one little area, is what you can do for a very nice effect is get your brush wet, and what you're going to do is lay down your brush kind of on its side, smash it down, and then you're just going to put the tip in the color, and what it's going to do is it's going to kind of pick up the color in the tip, and then it's going to fade out as it gets farther away from the tip. So that side of your brush is putting down water ahead of your tip, and if you move it around, it's going to drag out the water drag out the color very slowly and nicely and evenly. So if I want just a really, really light but with dark on the tip, I can do that. And you can actually not spread it so far. I'm going to just totally play with this so you can see. I'm going to take a darker color so you can see. Actually, why don't I just do it right on the side? If you want a dark color and then it fades out really fast to a lighter color, this is what I'm talking about. You lay it down and you kind of smash down your tip, and right there it starts dragging the color out into the water that's on the rest of the brush, but it keeps that tip part pretty nice and dark, and then it fades out all on its own. So that is a really nice thing you can do if you have petals. So let me show you. If you have a petal like this, oh, I don't want to use that. That's too dark. If you have a petal, and let's say you wanted the edge of the petal to be really dark, I put down the color like this. Get my brush and wet it, dab off just a little bit of the excess, and I smash it down, and I just kind of wiggle the brush around, and you can see that the brush and the water draw out the color all on its own, and you get that really nice fade going out from the color. And that's one really easy way to get a really nice gradation of color. You know, usually you do the dark in the center, but I'm just showing you here that you can do that. And if it's too dark on the outside, just get some more water and actually drag it out with the tip of your brush. And you can see that you get a lot more color coming out that way than if you do the side of the brush method, which just draws out a little bit of the color but leaves those edges pretty dark. And if you want it to be even darker, you can come back in and just again on the edges, and you can wait until that's dry or do it wet. I usually wait until it's dry to do more layers. You can see I'm just doing that same technique where I'm smashing the brush down, and the color is staying really dark on the ends, but yet it's blending in towards the center so that you don't see that harsh line. Let me see if you can get even closer. Focus, focus, there we go. So you can see you don't see a harsh line, you see just a nice, really nice blend of color there. Okay, so that's one of the things that I do when I'm doing my watercoloring. So let's go back to, so my petal's not fully dry, but it's dry enough. So I just showed you how I came in with the second color. Before it was dry, I came in with the second color and I blended it out, and I didn't blend it as far out as the yellow because I want it darker towards the center. So the thing about these watercolors is that they will always reactivate with water. They're not like Inktense pencils. Once they dry, they become permanent, and then you can go over the color and it won't mix. But these Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers are just like regular watercolors, where if you let it, even if you let it dry, if you go over it again with a wet brush, it'll reactivate. Okay? So I just did a little bit more blending that out because I like a really, really smooth blend. Some people like a different look with their watercolors. There are many different looks you can get with watercolors. I like really smooth blends and no lines. Some people like the lines. I think sometimes the lines are really nice. I can't do it well, but sometimes when you leave the lines, which is the edge of the color, in, it gives it a really neat, different watercolor look, and I don't know how to do that well without it looking like I put lines on my paper. So I tend to like a really smooth blend with no lines. And then, so this part is dry now. I'm just going to come in here and show you the colors that I use. This is number 29, and I use this as my red. And it's always the same thing. You just put down the color, get your brush, and blend it out however far you want. And of course the red is going to be mostly in the center, so I'm not blending that out too far. and so that would be that color. And then the darkest color that I used was this one. It is, oh, I can't read that. Sorry. 260. And this is the darkest color, and let me just show you compared to this one. That's how that looked. And so I put that just in the very centers and the bottom of the, oh, I'm sorry, I so don't know what that thing is called, the thing that sticks out of the middle part. I should probably look that up. But this is the darker. It's just a little bit darker, but it gives a lot of depth when you layer it on top of that other red color. And then what I did afterwards, you can see that I actually put some orange stripes on the lines on the petals. So what I did was I came in with number 70 after the red and everything was all dried. Then I just came in and I did really fine lines, and you can do really fine lines with these markers. The brush tips give you either a really nice thick line or a really nice thin line, and all I did was draw some lines out to look like orange veining in the petals. And then I actually took my smaller brush, my little detail brush, and I just pulled out that color. I don't want to spread it because I want it to be thin lines. I want to spread it straight out, not sideways. So just a little bit of water, and I'm just pulling that out so it's not such a harsh drawn line. And then so it kind of fades out a little bit towards the end. But I'm not wanting to spread this out. That's why I'm using my tiny, tiny little brush. I'm just drawing it out in a line, but not making the line fatter. And that's basically all I did. I used a couple of different greens on the leaves. I used a couple of different browns on the frame. And then because this background looked a little weird just in this sort of blackish gray tone, I took a dark blue marker and went around that and brought out that color. You can barely tell, but you can see here's the difference between that blue and that just regular background. So once again, here is the finished image. I hope that helps you with your Zig pens, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them for me and I'll try and get back to you. Thank you very much for watching.